So factor completely. And you're going to factor, where we're going to factor trinomials of this form. So look something like x squared plus bx plus c. So in particular, for right now, our coefficient of x squared is going to be a 1. All right, so and that's the easy kind. The easy kind is when the coefficient of x squared is going to be a 1. But it'll say factor completely. Factor completely. So example number 1. Suppose we had x squared plus 12x plus 20. All right, so whenever you're factoring a trinomial like this, whenever you're factoring a trinomial, first thing you always want to look for is the GCF, the GCF. And so notice the three terms there, 3 terms here, okay, 3 terms here. The GCF of those 3 terms is 1. See, the coefficient here is 1, the coefficient here is 12, the coefficient here is 20, the constant's 20. So the GCF of those is 1. The variable x does not appear in every term. It only appears in 2 of them. So I can't put an x in here. So the GCF is 1. Whenever the GCF is 1, you want to go now directly to factoring this as 2 binomials. 2 binomials. Okay? And if you think about the FOIL method, you remember the FOIL method. So this is kind of like reverse FOIL. So remember, F stands for first. So what times what? So what times what will give me x squared? So you're going to say x times x. So x times x is x squared. Okay? Then you're going to go to the L, the last. So do the F first and then the L last. So you want a positive 20. So there are several possibilities for positive 20. For example, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, 1 times 20. So those are your possibilities, okay? You want to make sure you use the right one. You can't just pick any of these. So remember, you want that middle term to be 12. Whenever the coefficient is 1, one of the things you can look for is this. You want your product to be positive 20, and you want the sum to be a positive 12. So if I look at 2 and 10, 2 times 10 is 20, right? And then when I add 2 and 10 up, I do get 12. So that's the one you're going to use. See this, you're not going to use this because 4 times 5 is 20, but when I add them up, 4 plus 5 is 9. 1 times 20 is 20, but when I add them up, 1 plus 20 is 21. So that's what you're going to use. So you can put the 2 here, the 10 there. The last sign's positive. So remember we used the FOIL method? The last sign's positive. That means these signs in here have to be the same. And they're going to be that middle sign. So they're both going to be positive. And before you say that's the answer, always check with FOIL. Always do the FOIL again. So x times x is x squared. Do the last. Positive 2 times a positive 10 is a positive 20. Now do the out and the inner. The outer is 10x. The inner is 2x. And 10x plus 2x is 12x. And that's what you wanted. So the answer will be x plus 2 times x plus 10. So that's how you're going to factor those. All right. So as we move on through the idea of factoring, we're going to use the idea of FOIL in many cases. All right, let's look at another one. So I'm going to try and do 2 more before our time's up. Let's look at number 2. Let's suppose number 2 I had this. I had x squared plus 5x minus 36. First thing you always must do is look for a GCF. So the GCF of x squared, 5x, and negative 36 is 1. Whenever it's just a 1, you go directly to factoring as 2 binomials, product of 2 binomials. And think of FOIL. Think of FOIL. So do the F and the L first. So first times first. So what times what is x squared? Well, that's always easy. That's going to be x times x. Okay, now let's do the last. I want a negative 36. So remember how we talked about here? Product and sum. Whenever the coefficient of x squared is 1, that's the easy kind. That's always the easy kind. So I want my product to be a negative 36. not 36. Remember, they always keep the sign, negative 36. And I want my sum to be a positive 5. So let's think about this. Let's think about, I'm doing a little t-table here. Let's think about two numbers whose product is negative 36. So for example, let's say 3 times what? 12? 3 times 12 is 36, but I want it to be negative, right? So let's make this one negative. But when I add them up, the sum is negative 3 plus 12. The sum is 9, but that's not what you wanted. You wanted 5. So you may say, all right, let's try 6 times 6. Because 6 times 6 is 36, but I want a negative, so let's make one negative. When I add them up, though, a negative 6 and a positive 6 is 0. That didn't help because I want a 5. I want this middle coefficient. So then let's try 4 and 9, right? So if I make, let's say, this negative 4, is that going to work now? Negative 4 times 9 is a negative 36, and negative 4 plus 9 is a positive 5. So the sum is 5, and so that's the one I need. And all you do is you put negative 4 in one of them, and you put 9 in the other, the positive 9 right here, I'm sorry, positive 9, and then you're done. You just got to check it though. X using FOIL. X times X is X squared. A negative 4 times a positive 9 is a negative 36. The outer is 9X. The inner is negative 4X. And when I add them up, a negative 4X, that's a 4. And a positive 9X is a positive 5X, and that's what you wanted. So the answer is going to be X minus 4 times X plus 9. That's the answer there. All right, let's look at number 3. Number 3, we have this. We have 3q squared minus 9q, that's a q, minus 120. All right, now remember, we got to look for the GCF. GCF. So the GCF, see, that's a 3, that's a negative 9, that's a negative 120. So there, besides the factor 1, 3 goes into all of those. So the GCF is 3. And it's only 3, not q, because you got to have q's in all of them, and there's no q here. So that's your GCF. Now remember previous lesson, once you find your GCF, you factor it out. Okay, so let's do that part. So my GCF is 3 this time. So remember in the previous problem, whenever it was just a 1, whenever the GCF is 1, you went directly to 2 binomials. What you have to do now is this. Since the GCF is not a 1, you're going to say 3 times, and then you're going to figure out, well, what goes here times 3 will give us this. So 3 times q squared is 3q squared. 3 times the negative 3q, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And then 3 times, what's that, 40? So 3 times a negative 40 is negative 120. But you're not done, because now what you got to do is this. See, this now looks like what we were doing here. So now you got to try and see this coefficient 1 right here. So now you got to try and factor that as 2 binomials. But don't forget to bring down the 3. So let's go off to the side and kind of figure that out. So we have 9q squared times minus 3q minus 140. So we got to figure out what goes here to give us this back. So q times q is q squared. All right, so let's talk about product and sum. So I want the product to be negative 40, and I want the sum to be negative 3, right? Product to be negative 40 and sum to be negative 3. So let's think about some numbers that could possibly work. So for example, someone may say, well, 2 times 20 is 40, but I want it to be negative, so let's make 2 negative. But the sum, though, is not going to help us, because the sum, negative 2 plus 20, is 18, but I wanted a negative 3. I wanted the sum to be negative 3. So then you may say, well, what about 8 and 5, right? So let's say 5 and 8. Well, 5 times 8 is 40, correct? And you may say, well, I'm going to make this negative because I want it to be a negative 40. But here's the problem, though. Watch. When you do the sum, negative 5 plus 8 is 3. But that's not what you wanted. You wanted a negative 3. All that means is this. instead of making 5 negative, make 8 negative. And then you get the sum to be a negative 3, and that's what you're going to use. So then right here, you're going to say plus 5 minus 8, and that should work. You just do the outer and the inner. So look, the outer is negative 8 q. The outer is negative 8q. The inner is positive 5q. You can't see it, but when you add them up, you get negative 3q, and that's what you wanted. So I'm going to put this right here. You're going to say q plus 5 times q minus 8, and there's your answer. Okay? So I didn't have enough time to do any more, but I want to do this one real quickly. A squared plus 2a plus 10. There could be some situations where you may have something like this. So if you try to factor this as two binomials, you may say, well, a times a is a squared. You want two numbers whose product is 10. You're going to say 5 and 2, and you're going to say, well, the last sign's positive, so that means these signs have to be the same. That'd be the middle sign. But here's the problem, guys. Watch. This is 2a. This is 5a. When you add them up, you get 7a, but that's not what you wanted. So then you may say, well, if I switch them, it still won't work. And you may say, well, let's do 10 and 1. 10 and 1 won't work either. Because when you do the outer and the inner, the outer is a, the inner is 10a. When you add them up, you get 11a, but you wanted 2a. So whenever you exhaust all possibilities, remember the word, you're going to say prime. So on that worksheet you have to do, I think one of them is prime. I can't remember. But if you exhaust all possibilities, that means you cannot factor it, so you say prime. All right, so as you go through the lessons for that topic, you're gonna talk about the word prime in there. All right. Okay, so that's about all I can do with this topic.